Today I would like to discuss with you the most powerful and important yoga practice, which is Bhastrika. Now there are two pranayams, Bhastrika and Kapalabhati, that are very much related. In Bhastrika we're using both inhalation and exhalation are forced and rapid. In Kapalabhati, only the exhalation is forced. The inhalation is automatic. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to demonstrate the differences because it's such a strange thing on YouTube. I have had a lot of people ask me about this particular practice because they tell me that the videos on YouTube aren't clear, and when I went and saw a few, and I've seen about 4 or 5 of them now, and it's true, a lot of the people demonstrating Bhastrika aren't actually demonstrating Bhastrika, they're demonstrating Kapalabhati. So I'm not sure what's going on there, but again, the essential difference is Kapalabhati is sort of the beginners. So what it is, the best thing to do is to take a deep 3-part breath. Fill in the lower part, middle part, then upper part, and as you exhale from the upper part, middle part, and then lower part. So take a couple of 3 deep part breaths, and on the last inhalation, just force the exhalation. The inhalation will automatically happen. That is Kapalabhati. So this is what it looks like. Take a couple of deep breaths. Inhale, keep the eyes closed. Keep the spine straight. And on the last inhalation, I'm going to begin Kapalabhati. Note when I'm exhaling, the abdomen will contract. That's Kapalabhati. To move upwards to Bhastrika, you just increase the speed, and both the inhalation and exhalation are equal and forced and rapid. And you can kind of maintain that at a mild, medium, or intense speed, but you should work up to that, okay? So this is what Bhastrika will look like. Inhale, inhale, exhale, 3-part breath. Keep the eyes closed, keep the spine straight. Inhale, and begin Bhastrika. I'm going to go a little faster. And then I'm going to go even faster. Exhale. Inhale. So those are the differences. That is the differences. And for some reason, when I looked at some of the videos doing Bhastrika, they're not doing Bhastrika, they're doing Kapalabhati. So I'm not really sure what's going on there, but that is the difference. So begin with Kapalabhati, and then as you feel comfortable with the speed and the inhalation, exhalation, work up to Bhastrika. But you should be working towards Bhastrika. Now, these pranayams are considered the most powerful and the most important because what is the goal of yoga? The goal of yoga is chitta vritti nirodha, restraining the mind from being modified from its natural state, stilling the changing states of the mind. That is the goal of yoga. So Pranayama is a means of obtaining that. We're in pranayama, in yoga is actually about the mind. The postures and the first 3 limbs, yama, niyama, and asana gets the body ready for the higher yoga, which begins with pranayama. So if the goal of yoga is to still and calm the mind, then pranayama is one of the easiest methods of doing this, because it's so much easier to control the breath than it is to control the mind. You can control your breath, you can hold your breath, you can breathe deeply. You are the master of how much air you want to take in or out. You can hold your breath, because you can't hold your breath for long, but you have much more control over controlling the breath than you do over controlling the mind. It's not easy to control the mind. Tell the mind to stop thinking. See what happens. It's not easy to do, because especially if there's so much thinking that's going on, you have to gradually reduce the density of the mind so that you're not thinking so much. That's what pranayama does. One of the things it does, it gradually reduces the density of the mind. It's like a carpet sweeper. It actually sweeps out the patterns of thinking and reduces the density of thoughts that's in the mind. It also dissolves the samskaras and renders the impressions made from those samskaras harmless. So a samskara is an impression, a psychic impression formed from an attachment. And these samskaras can be carried over from lifetime to lifetime. They form a kind of tapestry through which we perceive reality, but we're not perceiving reality clearly because we have this filter which is full of our life's past experiences, which color and misrepresent the current reality, the reality in the here and now. So one of the things that this Bhastrika does, it dissolves these samskaras, these mental impressions. And until these mental impressions are gone, we're governed by them. These samskaras also have a lot to do with our karma, because what's ever in the mind, that's what you carry over. And what's ever in the mind, that's what you're experiencing. You're attracting experiences based on what is in your mind, what ideas that you have. Those are the experiences you're attracting. So if you've had some experiences in the past that you retained, that you formed an attachment to, those then can come back to you, and you can attract these same experiences in the current life because of these samskaras. So one thing that Bhastrika does, and Kapalabhati, is it dissolves these samskaras. The other thing that it does, it takes us further inward. It is almost impossible to attain realization if you have no control over your senses, because your senses do the opposite. Your senses are like wild horses. They pull you into the world, right? They create desires. You know, you're sitting reading a book, and you smell something wonderful in the kitchen. That's it. You've lost your concentration. You go into the kitchen because you're attracted to the smell in the kitchen. You're maybe outside doing some yoga, and you see something, a person walk by wearing a really cool pair of pants. Oh, that's it. I really you're distracted. So the senses pull us outward. And what Bhastrika and Kapalabhati do is, it acts like a vehicle, pulling us inward. So prana, which is the Hebrew name for soul, actually is a means to withdraw into the fifth level, which is pratyahara, or sense withdrawal. That can't happen until we control the breath. So the breath controls the mind, and the mind controls the senses. So that is another thing that Bhastrika and Kapalabhati, they do, is they provide a means of going within and pulling the senses within, and which opens us up to the inner reality, which is extraordinary. But it's very difficult to go into that reality when you're so attracted to the one outside of us. And that's why regular practice of Kapalabhati or Bhastrika will enable you to withdraw into yourself. Another thing that it does, the maximum benefits of Bhastrika and Kapalabhati, the maximum benefits occur once we practice retention. That is when we get the maximum benefits. Because in retention, we are expanding, raising and expanding the prana. And that is actually the essence of Tantra Yoga. The raising and expansion of prana consciousness is the actual essence of Tantra Yoga. And of course, the essence of Tantra Yoga is to unify those forces, those binaries, male and female within us, so they're more balanced. But one of the methods that Patanjali mentions in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali for God realization is pranayama. In the first pada, in the first book of the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, Patanjali mostly gets into the theory of yoga and the whole tradition of the various methods used to achieve samadhi or final liberation. And pranayama is one of them. Sutra 34, or that calm is retained by the controlled exhalation or retention of the breath, or that calm is retained by the controlled exhalation or retention of the breath. Now here, Patanjali is not even referring to Bhastrika. He's referring to Kapalabhati, because in Kapalabhati, we're just focusing on the controlled exhalation, which is what he mentions, which suggests that you don't even have to do the advanced form, Bhastrika, to get the benefits of this practice towards the goal of samadhi. But you should know that by practicing kumbhaka or retention, you are actually getting into the maximum benefits of Kapalabhati or Bhastrika. And one of these benefits is it loosens up and unties the granthis, what we call the granthis. In yoga, granthis are knots or doubts or an especially difficult knot to untie. They're formed from samskaras, and they're psychological blocks that form in the body in various places and can cause, later on, they can actually cause illness. If you have a permanent block somewhere, I really believe that is the foundation for cancer, because cancer is a mutation of cells, an overgrowth of cells. Well, what causes that to happen? Negative thinking and a negative emotional block, if it's left there, will eventually manifest as a negative manifestation of negative cells or mutation of cells that eventually turns into cancer. So what the retention does, and in retention we're using the 3 bandhas, Jalanda bandha, which is a throat lock, Uddiyana bandha, which is the stomach lock, and Mula bandha, which is the anal lock. Each of those bandhas creates, can remove or loosen up a knot, these knots. So again, it is really, really important. This practice is really, because this is the whole goal of yoga. I mean, Ramana Maharshi actually said that yoga is really just getting back into the pristine state, purifying the mind and body. Because it's really what's going on in the mind and this tapestry of ideas that we have and these samskaras that blocks this truth and obscures our immortal self, that we can't experience it. Once that tapestry has been removed, you just see the truth and experience heaven or nirvana right here and now, because it is here. Nirvana is here. It's not a place we go to when we die. And the only reason why we're unable to see it is because of the mind. So these pranayams destroy the manas, the lower mind, the mind of the mind of perception and senses, the sensory mind. It actually destroys that mind. And that is the mind that gives rise to the ego. So if you are destroying the manas, you're also destroying the ego, and that is the whole point of yoga. So, and it's kind of easy to do. It's much easier to do than sit and try to focus on a mantra. It's so much easy just to do pranayama because you have absolute control over this. So again, I would highly recommend that you do these 2 pranayamas every single day. I would highly recommend that you do them twice a day, probably before your meditation and after your hatha yoga practice, because in some respects the asanas will help to loosen up those knots. You're squeezing, you're twisting, it will help to loosen up those knots, but it's the pranayama that blows them out. So after you do your hatha yoga session, do 10 to 15 minutes of Kapalabhati or Bhastrika, and try to do at least 15 minutes of Kapalabhati and Bhastrika twice a day, preferably before you meditate. Now, if you really want to get to an advanced level and you really want to become God realized, you really want to reach samadhi, which is the final goal of yoga. There's actually many samadhis, and they begin with understanding what the point of nature. Each time we go within, and meet with a particular dimension of reality and understand it, that is a samadhi. Eventually, these several samadhis will take us to the final samadhi, which we have no control over. We don't have control over the final samadhi, but we do have control over those 7 samadhis. So it's really up to you. You are in complete control over your destiny, and you are in complete control over your happiness and your peace. And these 2 pranayams are actually the key to having those experiences, because they are so practical and easy to do. So again, Kapalabhati, you are forcefully exhaling. The inhalation happens automatically. And you can pick up the speed a little bit. And then you're going to find yourself picking up the speed and you're going into Bhastrika. This is Bhastrika. Go a little faster. So increase the speed. And on the last exhalation, inhale and perform Maha Bandha, which is the 3 locks. And slowly exhale. So the aim is to do Bhastrika, that is the goal. After each forceful inhalation and exhalation, you want to do kumbhaka, or retention. Because in retention, you are then getting the maximum benefits of this practice. This will break up the granthis, all these emotional blockages, and if if you have a fear of survival, a fear of not having enough money, for example, or getting a job, that can form a granthi in the base of the spine. This practice will dissolve all these emotional, psychological blockages. It's a wonderful practice. If you have any questions or any concerns or would like some more information, please don't hesitate to email me. I would be very happy to assist you. In the meantime, try this practice. Begin with Kapalabhati. When you're comfortable and have done about 50 rounds, increase the speed. Try, when you've worked up to 50 rounds 3 times a day, increase the speed, and then try retention after each round. Then increase the speed until you are doing about 100 reps. And when you are finally doing Bhastrika, where both the inhalation and exhalation are forced and equal and rapid, then you can continue doing that as long as it's comfortable. Sometimes I will do Bhastrika for an hour. I just continue doing it, and I will just, when I feel like I don't want to do it anymore, I exhale, inhale, do retention, exhale, inhale, and start again. And I will do that for about an hour. And as I'm doing it, I'm repeating my mantra in my head. That is a very powerful, very, 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 very powerful technique. Kapalabhati and Bhastrika. These are the most important yoga practices, and I consider them the heart of yoga. So please try them. It should be a part of your yoga practice. Namaste.